Good afternoon, students. I am Sukriti Arora. On behalf of Board of Studies ICI, I welcome you all on today's online mentoring session on IIPC Paper 7A, Business Process Management and Automation through Application Software. Now the month of September has begun and I am very sure that all of you must be struggling very hard to cope up with the syllabus, and you must be also knowing how to prepare for the examination. So not to waste much of the time, I would simply request you all that the subject that you are studying, you need to study that subject first of all from the Board of Studies publications, that is study material, followed by the practice manual. For your coming attempt, November 2016, July 2015 edition of study material, and April 2016 edition of practice manual are applicable. Those who are the first timers, I am sure they might have started quite a lot early with their studies. But those who had not been able to pass the examination in May 2016, it's a high time. You should recollect your courage back and you should start studying now. The very best policy to study is that you have to follow a process, you have to follow a strategy. And the best strategy which is workable most of the time is that you need to understand the technical aspect of the topics which you are dealing. Once you have understood the technical aspect, then you are advised to actually learn the concept and then practice the questions from the practice manual. Those questions could be unsolved questions or could be the solved questions. So this is the process, and as I am using the word process, this means that it has to have a logical set of activities. You directly cannot jump to the RTP, or you should not be jumping directly to the practice manual, because it could not bring you the desired result, and ultimately there could be a possibility that you may not be able to pass your examination. So the best set of activity would be that you have to firstly study the material, which is the July 2015 edition, and then follow the questions from the practice manual of April 2016 edition. Ronak has asked a question: automation in business means all the processes in the business and its related activities is carried out automatically through system and application softwares. That's right, Ronak. The automation means that we are using the technology and we are trying to inculcate the technology in the business processes so that the work, day-to-day activities get bit simpler, and obviously the error-making concept or the error-making chances get lowered. So the automation means that we are using the technology part and we are trying to perform the process in a more automated manner. Ronak is asking, how shall we answer the questions in the exam of IT and SM? Kindly suggest, can we answer the question in our own words? Ronak, what I'm trying to say here is that the subject IT is a technical paper and there cannot be any compromise on it. For example, if the automation word is used for the incorporation of the technology in any business process, you would appreciate that the same terminology should be used in the answers also. But having said that, if you have just crammed the headings and the internal content you are not very thoroughly understood, so what would happen that you would write anything and everything that may or may not belong to that particular heading. So what if the question is of 4 marks, you have simply written the headings and the internal content is not up to the mark, you will not be able to get the good marks. But at the same time, if you have been able to write even in your own words the technical aspect which belongs to that particular heading or the question, you will be getting the marks, because study material is just one way of expressing the concept to you. There could be different ways also, but you have to understand that there cannot be any compromise on the technical aspect. And on top of it, the answers should belong to the question, because it's been seen that whatever question is, the students simply write whatever they know under the particular heading. If the question belongs to grid computing, whatever little or more they know about that topic, they would try to fit in those particular topics in that question. And therein the question, you will write any answer and probably you will not get the marks. So I would tell you, this type of concept clarity that what exactly I need to write would come only through writing. So once you've understood the clarity, you've understood the concept, you've attained the clarity of the topics, I am advising you to go to the practice manual and start practicing the questions, not only verbally, but through writing. Once you write the answers, you go back to the study material or the practice manual and cross-check and self-analyze your performance, that how or what points I am in a habit of skipping. So when you are having say 6 points in a particular answer and you are being able to manage only with 3, then you need to understand that these are the 3 points which I am more in a habit of skipping. So mark those 3 points with the different colored ink, so that whenever next time you are going to revise the topic, you are very well aware that these are the 3 points I am well aware of, and these are the 3 points I am more in a habit of skipping. So that way you will be filtering your knowledge, you will be filtering your revision process, and you would be emphasizing more on the topics or the subheadings which you are not in a habit of writing, or probably you skipped in your first time reading. So this way you will see that once you will write the answers, slowly and gradually you yourself will analyze that I am improving, and second time if you will be trying to write the answer, there could be a possibility that you may not skip even a single heading out of those 6 headings, or maybe a single heading. So this way you yourself can improve your performance, and in no time you will see that your 26 marks will convert into 62 if you are going to practice the questions through writing. So all the very best. And now, because I haven't yet got any further questions, we shall switch over to our PPT presentation of the topic. Before I start the presentation, I would just like you to keep a note of the disclaimer. LMS is available and students are advised to refer to these e-lectures which are freely accessible. I have already told you that for November 16 examinations, July 2015 edition of study material and April 2016 edition of practice manual are applicable. Now we shall start with the topic. So first of all, we need to define that what is a business process. A business process consists of a set of activities that are performed in coordination in an organizational and technical environment to realize a business goal. That means the activities that we have, they should be performed in coordination so that a business goal is achieved. Like I have already explained you an example, that suppose you are preparing for an examination, so you have to have a set of activities that I would firstly follow the study material. I would give this much time each day to study for this particular subject. Then once I have understood a particular chapter from study material, I would follow the practice manual, and this way you will have a certain process. And what is your goal? The ultimate goal for you is to pass in your examination. So herein also, when we talk about any particular enterprise or any business organization, we say that a process has to have a set of activities which are performed in coordination in an organizational and technical environment. For what good reason? To achieve a business goal. So there has to be certain goals for which a business process is going to be performed. A business process is initiated by a particular kind of event, has a well-defined beginning and an end, and is usually completed in a relatively short period. That means that there has to be certain input, some processes need to be defined, and there has to be certain output, and that output of the business process should provide me the desired result for which an enterprise has actually gone for the initiation of the business process. For example, herein we see that there is an inquiry from the customers, the very step. So that particular inquiry is reviewed. The inquiry is initiated by a customer. The inquiry is reviewed by the company, and it is going to see how much feasible that particular inquiry of the customer is. In the step 3, request to client, the company will submit its summary of services and requests the client to see and approve. The step 4, Submission of sample work. The company will submit a work sample which will be sent to the customer, and the customer will see whether this particular sample work is attaining the desired result or not. And if it will be, it will authorize the company to start the process. Then the step 5 will be a purchase order will be made and the work would be started. And lastly, the step 6, they will start working and finally they will submit their work for the approval of the customer. So this is how a business process in general would work, that there will be a certain demand from a customer. The company would review that particular demand. It would submit its work sample that this is how they are planning to initiate or solve the inquiry of the customer. And if that will be approved and will be suitable to the customer will give go ahead, and finally the work will be done. So we have seen that for any business process, there has to be a flow. That means there will be certain set of activities. They will run in a proper sequence. And in the end, we should get a concluded desired output. So herein we will see an accounting cycle, that there has to be a source document, and this document will initially capture the data from the transactions and the events. Then followed by the journal, wherein the transactions are recorded into journals from the source document. So the input has flown from source document to the journal. Then comes the ledger, wherein the entries are posted to the ledger from the journal. Then comes the trial balance, which will contain all the debit and credit balances from ledger accounts. Then comes the adjustments, wherein appropriate adjustments will be passed. Then will come the adjusted trial balance. This will be finalized post adjustments. Then comes the closing entries, wherein the appropriate entries are passed to transfer accounts to the financial statements. And lastly, the financial statement would be generated, wherein the accounts are organized. So this is how we see that an accounting cycle will start from a source document and will give us a concluded report, which is a financial statement. So they will follow a certain set of activities wherein the input of a particular phase would act as an output for the other, or the output of a particular phase would act as an input for the next phase. So they have to be sequential set of activities. Now, when we talk about a business process, certain terminologies that are associated with the business process would be, first of all, it has to have a flow, which we have just seen through our previous examples. Then will come the business process management. That means whenever there is a business process, there has to be a particular management. They have to have a certain set of rules to define how that particular business process will be managed. Then will come the automation. By default, now these days, all the business processes do involve the information technology. So they are all automated. And then we have to have business process reengineering, wherein any existing business process may be defined as completely useless, maybe in coming years. So they have to keep on improving. So the business process reengineering will come. And because business process has become so important in our day-to-day operations, it is becoming more and more vulnerable for lot many attacks. So there will be attack from the business process. And to prevent our business processes against these attacks, we have to put some controls so that these attacks can be minimized. So the terms related with business process broadly would be business process management, automation, re-engineering, and controls. So here in our presentation, I would be explaining these terminologies to you, and on top of it, we will also be seeing what is the role performed by each of these terms. So the very first terminology that we need to understand is the business process management. Now, BPM mainly focuses on improving corporate performance by managing and optimizing a company's business processes. So all the business processes that we have, it's not that it's a one-time activity that business processes are implemented. These business processes need to be managed and need to be improved off and on so that the business goals are achieved optimally. So the business process management is a continuous evaluation of existing processes. Even though they are implemented, there has to be a continuous evaluation and monitoring whether these business processes are still being able to deliver what is expected, and identification of ways to improve upon it, resulting in a cycle of overall organizational improvement. So it is a continuous process and not just one-time activity. Any business process, when being implemented, has to be monitored to see whether it's been working properly or not. So some of the examples of BPM are human resources, wherein BPM business processes are implemented, they are automated and are being managed. These are the major industries wherein the BPM plays a major role. Finance and purchasing, CRM, customer relationship management, sales and marketing, research and development. So some of these fields, they are business process management activities are very high, and one has to see that these particular fields, they always have some different goals to achieve. So their business processes must keep on improving to go for those particular adaptations. So a BPM will have a particular life cycle wherein the very first phase will be analysis. So BPM is also defined as a process optimization process. So the very first phase would be analysis phase. This involves analysis of the current environment, current processes, and then what are the needs, identification of those needs, and then the definition of those requirements. So the analysis would be followed by the design phase, which will involve the evaluation of potential solutions to meet the identified needs, business process designing and modeling. Then will come the implementation, which would involve the project preparation, blueprinting, realization, and final preparation, which will be implemented. Then after the implementation, it will be run and monitor. So the business process will be executed in this particular phase and it will be constantly monitored. And then will lastly come the optimization, which is for the continuous improvement. So as and when the existing business process will fail anywhere, this particular phase will detect that particular need, and again the analysis part will try to check or identify the need, and this way whole of this process will keep on going. So it is a continuous evaluation and monitoring of the existing business processes. Then comes the business process re-engineering, BPR. BPR is an activity to redesign and re-engineer current business process which is supposedly inefficient. So this activity starts from the scratch and it restructures an optimal business process. This business process re-engineering will involve changes in order to convert the old process into new or enhanced version. So in this, a completely new business process would evolve in case the existing business process is declared as inefficient. The main focus is to remove all unnecessary process flows, links, and redundant steps in the business process and replace it with a better one. So here, the main terminology is that they are going to be replaced by the better business processes in case the existing business process is defined as of no use. So one can ask that what are the major differences between BPM and BPR? Is that BPM will use the existing process, whereas BPR will start or redesign the business process from the scratch. So it will give altogether a new business process, BPR, whereas BPM is trying to improve the existing business processes. And that is why in the BPM, the risk is very low, whereas in BPR, the risk factors are quite a lot high. In the BPM, the change is continuous, wherein in the BPR, there is one big radical change which will be done. So, BPM is considered to be less expensive because it is going to use the existing processes, whereas BPR is defined as more expensive. Then comes the theories of process management. So majorly two theories of process management have evolved, which is Six Sigma and TQM. Now, what is the use of process management? Because we have just discussed that there is a need or there is a focus on continuous improvement. An organization is always facing a competition in and around the nation or globally. So they have to have this customer oriented economy. They have to have a consideration for the customer feedback, and according to the feedback they need to improve their processes. So what will be the major theories of process management? Whenever there is a need of improvement, these two processes may be involved, Six Sigma and TQM. So now Six Sigma, it is a set of strategies, techniques and tools for process improvement. What will it mean? It means that each Six Sigma project carried out within an organization will follow a defined sequence of steps and will have quantified value targets. For example, there could be a possibility that the company will start working on the issue of reducing the cost or increasing the customer satisfaction or increasing the profit for a business. So Six Sigma seeks to improve the quality of process outputs by identifying and removing the causes of defects and minimizing variability in the business processes. The Six Sigma follows a particular cycle, which is DMAC cycle. D, define, M, measure, A, analyze, I, improve, C, control. So the very first step would be to define. So customers are identified here and their requirements are gathered. Measurements that are critical to the customer satisfaction are identified in this particular point. Then comes measure. The process output measures that are critical, they are determined, and variables that affect these output measures are identified in this particular step. Then comes the analyze part. Using statistical methods and techniques, possible cause of process output variations are identified. These possible causes are analyzed statistically. Then the improvement phase will come. The alternative solutions are generated to fix the root cause, and the most appropriate solution is chosen at this level on the basis of cost and benefit analysis or on the basis of timelines. And then the implementation plan is drafted and executed. And lastly, the control process is standardized and documented. Project is evaluated, and whatever outcomes, they are shared with others. So this way, Six Sigma project will involve these 5 steps, wherein the concentration would be majorly to improve the quality of the processes or quality of the standards. Then comes the second process management technique, which is the TQM. And TQM is a comprehensive and structured approach to organizational management that seeks to improve the quality of products and services through ongoing refinements in response to continuous feedback. So it is the organization-wide effort to install and make permanent a climate in which it continuously evolves and improves. As a current focus of e-business, TQM is based on quality management from the customer's point of view. So the basic difference between total quality management and Six Sigma is that TQM basically delivers the superior quality goods. Whereas Six Sigma results in better results overall. TQM refers to continuous efforts by employees to ensure that high quality products are made available to the customer, whereas the Six Sigma incorporates many small changes in the system to ensure that effective results are attained and customer is better satisfied. TQM also has a cycle which is known as PDCA cycle, and it again says the same, that the very first step would be P for plan. So in the planning phase, people define the problem to be addressed or the root cause of the problem. Then will come the do. In this phase, people will develop and implement a solution which will take care of the need that has arisen at this level. Then comes the checking phase, wherein people will confirm the results through before and after comparison, after data comparison. And finally, in the act phase, people will document their results, inform others about the process changes, and make recommendations for the problem to be addressed in the next PDCA cycle. So this again is a continuous process, and TQM emphasizes on improving the existing policies and making necessary changes in the systems to ensure superior quality products and services. Organizations which practice the Six Sigma are focused on removing errors and defects to ensure high quality products. So herein we have seen that the main focus of TQM management is to maintain existing quality standards. They mainly emphasize on the existing quality standards that they are maintained. Whereas in the Six Sigma, it will primarily focus on making small necessary changes in the processes to ensure high quality products. Now comes the next topic, which is known as information processing. So as we have seen that throughout the business process automation, the most important thing that is getting thrown from one phase to another is the information or the data. And end of the product, we should be having a relevant information that which is required by a particular business organization. So the information process is required, and it is defined as the effort to create information from the raw data. Information means which is available and is useful to any organization. Two types of information processing is defined. The first is manual information processing cycle, and the second is computerized information processing cycle. Now, as we can see through diagram, in the manual information processing cycle, this is defined as the systems where the manual intervention is quite high, whereas in the computerized information processing cycle, these systems use the technology and the manual intervention is very low. In manual information processing cycle, the input is given wherein the input is processed and a desired output is attained. Whereas in computerized information processing cycle, the same manual information processing cycle, at the same time, the storage is done in the memory and feedback is also being given so that there is always a scope of improvement. And when do we say that the information becomes an asset? When the information is useful, digital, accessible, relevant, accurate, trustworthy, searchable, understandable, and shareable. So we have a raw data that can be processed manually, and at the same time it can be done in a computerized way. At end of the day, we want that our information should be useful, should have certain attributes that I have just discussed, and should be available when it is required to be accessed. Now comes in business process automation. So we now all agree that nowadays the information has become an asset, and any relevant information belonging to a particular organization, it will be its major asset, because hardware and software can still be procured, but the information which is once leaked, tampered, or lost, that would lead fatal for any business organization, because the customers or the stakeholders trust would fall apart if any information is leaked. So it is now an asset for any business organization, and there have to be certain controls in order to hold minimum number of attacks. So the business process automation is required so that a global competition can be checked, and it is defined as a strategy that is used to optimize and streamline the essential business processes using the latest technology to automate the functions involved in carrying them out. It consists of integrating applications, restructuring labor resources, and using software applications throughout the organization. But at the same time, there will be many challenges to implement the business process automation. That how can any organization adjust these increasing demands in an environment whereas the number of interfaces with the customer is growing, the customer's demand is growing day by day. At the same time, the cost of the product should not increase to a level wherein there is no match between its competitors. Budgets are also being cut. Timelines are also very important. So the business process automation, if at all being done, would have to have these many challenges, and any particular enterprise need to cater to these challenges in order to implement or automate their business processes. But why do we need to have BPA at all? So need of BPA. It reduces the impact of human error because the technology part is involved. It transforms the data into information with the help of any process. It improves the performance and process effectiveness for sure, because time lines are cut in here. Makes the users more efficient and effective. Makes the business more responsive. Improves collaboration and information sharing. Cost saving, and helps to remain competitive. Fast services to the customers. So, because of these particular objectives, any enterprise would go for any business process automation. And once these business process automation is done, there has to be business process management and re-engineering. And at the same time, we need to put in certain controls so that the business processes do not become vulnerable to the threats and attacks from the internet and networking. So any business process automation will have certain objectives that it should follow CIA plus timelines. CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Confidentiality means that it ensures that data is only available to the person who is authorized to access it. It should not be available to anyone and everyone. It should be available to the authorized user. Then comes the integrity. This ensures that no unauthorized amendment or changes can be made in the data. Then comes the availability. That data is available whenever it is required. And then lastly, the timelines, that this ensures that data is made available to the right person at the right time. Now, how to go about BPA? The very first step is that we need to define why we plan to implement BPA, why there is a need to implement BPA. We have to question this. We have to answer this question, because this will provide the justification for implementing the automation. Then comes the understanding of rules and regulations under which it needs to comply with. This will answer that any BPA create needs to comply with applicable laws and regulations. Then comes the step 3, which document the process we wish to automate, that which particular process do we need to automate. The current processes which are planned to be automated need to be correctly and completely documented at this step. Then only the automation can be done. Followed by step 4, which will define the objectives and goals to be achieved by implementing the BPA, that what ultimately we need to achieve once a particular business process is automated. This will enable the developer and user to understand the reason for going for BPA. The goals need to be precise and clear. Then step 5, engage the business process consultant. Once the entity has been able to define the above, the entity needs to appoint an expert who can implement it for the entity. Then comes step 6, which is calculation of the ROI for project. It can be used for convincing top management to say yes to BPA exercise. Then comes the development of BPA. Once the top management grants their approval, the right business solution has to be procured and implemented or developed. So herein the SDLC part will come, wherein a particular business process, how to prepare, whether it is readily available in the market to procure or to customize or to develop it all together, will be decided at this point. And lastly, the step 8, which is the testing of BPA. Before making the process live, the BPA solution should be fully tested. So herein we can see that steps are involved and they are logical and sequential. It cannot be done that step 6 will come after step 2 or other way around. So these are the steps which have to have a sequential flow, and in the last it will be done that a BPA solution is fully tested and implemented. Then comes, we assume that there is a business process automation done and that has been implemented. It is being getting monitored. But when the business process automation is done, there are going to be certain controls that we need to put in place so that the attacks are minimal. And if there are any attacks, we have to have a disaster recovery plan available with us so that that disaster is minimal or the impact of it can be reduced. So how do we define control? A control is defined as policies, procedures, practices, and organization structure that are designed to provide reasonable assurance. So the word here is reasonable assurance. That means they are not foolproof. They do not give 100% assurance, but still they provide reasonable assurance that business objectives are achieved and undesired events are protected, detected, or corrected. So the very first objective would be to prevent. If at all the attack still occurs, then we should be able to detect it. And once detected, we have to have remedial actions so that the correction can be done immediately. So why do we have to have controls wherein we can see, suppose this is the physical hardware building, user organization, application, network communication, database, operating system, and data. Data is underlying at this particular point and these many layers are available. So we have to put the controls at each of these layers so that the data is protected in the last. But even if after the implementation of controls at these layers, there could be a possibility that an attack still occurs and reaches to the data and tampers it or may leak it, then we should have the detection and correction mechanisms with us. So the controls are basically the prevention. We need to put the preventive controls so that the attack, first of all, in its first line, it should not occur. But even if it occurs, we should be able to handle it. Now comes that what are the major objectives of the control? What do we get out of controls? Why do we need to put them? In general, we have already discussed, but if in terms of objectives you see, the control objective first is the authorization, which will ensure that all the transactions are approved by responsible personnel only and no unauthorized person is able to approve the authenticated data. Then comes the completeness. This will ensure that no valid transaction has ever been omitted from the records and the data which is available is complete. Then comes the accuracy. This will ensure that all the valid transactions are accurate and the information is recorded in a timely manner. Then comes the validity. This will ensure that all the recorded transactions represent the economic events that actually occurred. They are lawful in nature and have been executed in accordance with management's general authorization. Then comes the physical safeguards and security. This ensures that access to physical assets and information systems are controlled and properly restricted to only the authorized and responsible personnel. Error handling. This ensures that errors detected at any stage of processing will receive a prompt corrective action. And lastly, the segregation of duties, that the duties will be assigned to the individuals in a manner that will ensure that no one individual can control the other person's domain. So these are the control objectives with which any business process automation will have controls. These are the objectives, but if any of the objective is compromised and any attack still occurs, we have another controls which will detect and correct those particular attacks. Then comes the information systems controls. The information systems controls are used to prevent, detect or correct any unlawful event. And why the unlawful event can occur if unauthorized, incomplete, inaccurate, redundant, ineffective or inefficient input enters the system. So if anything of unlawful nature occur in a particular information system, there will be the set of activities that will compromise the objectives of the information systems controls and the attack will occur. So to avoid that the attack do not occur, we firstly need to place some of the preventive controls, and they will in its first phase will try to prevent the occurrence of any error or a fraud. For example, when we deploy a security guard outside a building, that is a preventive control. Segregation of controls, firewalls, antiviruses, they are all preventive controls because at first point in time, we do not want any of our information system to be attacked. Then comes the detective control. Even when the preventive controls are placed, still there could be a possibility that an attack occurs. Then we should be in a position to detect that particular control, detect that particular error. So the detective controls are the controls which capture an error. For example, the audit trails or the intrusion detection systems, or when we duplicate, check the calculations. They are all the detective controls to see if any error has actually occurred or not. And if in case the detective controls, with the use of detective controls, an error still occurs, then we have to have a corrective control wherein we will try to correct or rectify an error, and if not completely, we should be able to reduce the impact of that error. For example, the insurance policy, backup procedures, contingency plans, they are all the corrective controls that in case any kind of error occur, we should be in a position to resume back our business processes in little time, maybe in no time, and with little loss. Then comes the controls in BPA And herein I am discussing mainly the audit perspective, that with an auditor's perspective, what all controls he or she should mainly be emphasizing upon. So this is divided under two categories. The first is the managerial. Generally, auditors cannot examine and evaluate all the data processing which is carried out within an organization. So they need to have certain guidelines according to which they will monitor or they will audit a particular organization's information system. So ultimately, auditors must evaluate the reliability of controls. So they need to understand the nature of those controls. So the very first step is the managerial control, wherein the managerial control is divided in top management, information systems management, systems development, programming management, data administration, quality assurance, and security administration. Lastly, operations management. And the second perspective is application, that these are the controls the auditor need to emphasize on an application which is implemented. That would be the boundary controls, input, communication, processing, database, and lastly the output controls. We shall see these controls in detail. So the very first is top management. This will ensure that information systems function is well management. So top management controls, are they placed or not? They are basically responsible for long run policy decisions, and they should be quite a lot well managed. Then comes the information system management. It has overall responsibility for the planning and control of all information system activities. It also provides the advice to the top management in relation to long-run policy decision making. Then comes the systems development management. These controls are responsible for the design, implementation, and maintenance of application systems. Then comes the programming management. Programming management responsible for programming new systems, maintaining the old systems, and providing general system software. The primary objective of this control is to produce or acquire high quality programs. And lastly, the data administration. This is responsible for addressing planning and control issues in context of organization's data. So data is a critical resource and it should be managed properly, and therefore centralized planning and control are implemented. So the careful controls should be exercised at this level. Quality assurance management. Organizations are increasing, producing safety critical systems, and users are becoming more demanding in terms of quality. It is responsible for ensuring iOS development, implementation, operation, and maintenance, conforming to established quality standards. Security administration. It is responsible for access controls and physical security over the information systems. And lastly, operations management. It is responsible for planning and control of the day-to-day operations of information systems. Now we shall see if we have any queries. The very first, Ronak Agarwal is asking, can we answer the question in IT and SM paper in our own words? I have already explained you, Ronak, that till the time you are talking technically correct, you can write the answers very well. Ronak is again asking the question, what is the difference between business process reengineering and business process automation? Ronak, business process automation is the implementation of any business process using information technology. So whenever we are using the concept of technology in a business process, we say that business process automation has been done. But once it's been done, it's not the end of the story. They need to be properly monitored and controlled. And as and when supposedly the need for today, a particular business process has been automated and it is catering to the needs of a business, that is okay. But in the later stage, maybe down the line after 6 months, some more requirements are generated. Then these controls or the business processes which are being monitored properly, they need to be improved or they need to be changed altogether. So business process reengineering is a set of techniques which will emphasize on what all business processes have become obsolete, and altogether these business processes will be replaced by the new version of those business processes in order to meet the everyday ongoing demand of the customers. So business process automation would fall in first, followed by a constant monitoring, and in case any business process become obsolete, business processes re-engineering will come into picture, and it will replace that particular existing business process altogether with the new business process. Ronak, some of the questions you are asking like ROI and NGT's full form, I would just request you to send all these things to me through email. Ronak, there was a technical problem, so I'm not reading out this. Manisha Tutlani, she's asking difference organizational business processes and operational business processes. This is a topic in chapter 1, and business processes are classified under these two: organizational business process and operational business process. Now, organizational business process is more or less the top management which is being given to the business processes. So the controls or the activities that are being mainly emphasized here would be the high level. Whereas in operational business processes, how the process is being performed would be mainly emphasized on. So how the operations are being catered in a business process, what would be the flow, that would mainly be the area of concern in the operational business processes. However, you can refer to the study material, and in case you have any particular query regarding this, I would be letting you know through the email. Ronak is asking, can you give some examples of information system controls in context of IT? Ronak, whatever controls that I am discussing with you right now, they are all based on IT only, because information system controls in itself means that whenever I am talking about any information system, they are all automated. So these controls, the boundary controls, the output controls, database controls, security management controls, they are all a part which are implemented on an information system through IT only. However, top management controls, some of the controls which are falling under managerial controls, they are not automated, but still to make a particular business process automated, you have to have certain controls, and herein the decision making would come in picture. So those top management controls are non-automated or not based on IT. Otherwise, all the controls, the database controls, input, output, all the controls that I would be discussing or I have discussed, they are all a part of IT. Manisha Tutlani, please suggest the examples of business process management systems. Like I've already discussed, customer relationship management, human resource management, ERP, they are all the examples of BPMS. That means any business which is automated, it has to be managed and it has to keep on working for its improvement. So they are all well-defined examples of BPMS only. Okay, we shall switch over to the PPT now because certain more topics are left to be covered. So Ronak, as I have already told you that these are the tools, these are the controls that are already there and they are all IT based. Now we will talk about application controls. Now these are the controls which are mainly implemented in a particular application. So first is the boundary control. Boundary control comprises the components that establish between the user and system. Input controls. It comprises the components that capture, prepare, and enter commands and data into the system. So herein I will just give you an example. Herein I will give you the example that suppose there is an input in which I have to put in my name. So my name cannot be numerical. So therein I will put in the control where I should not be able to put any numbers during the entry. So the input control would be there, which will see that I am being able to write only the alphabets and not any number. So the input control would be a control that would capture, prepare and enter commands and data into the system, and it will ensure that a valid input is being put in. Communication controls. It comprises the components that transmit data among systems and subsystems. So the data flow has to be there from a process to another process, from a system to a subsystem. So the communication controls need to be put in place that while transmitting data from one system to another, the data does not get lost or tampered. So the communication controls need to be put in. The processing controls. This comprises the components that perform decision making, computation, classification, ordering and summarization of data in the system. That means when the processing is being done, some input has been received, and processing part, which would involve the computation, classification, ordering. At the processing also, some controls need to be put in place. Database controls. This will comprise the components that define, add, access, modify, and delete the data in the system. And lastly, the output controls. That comprises the components that retrieve and present data to users of the system. So output controls again would see that a valid report has been generated and the report which has got generated is useful. Then comes the next topic, which is the virtualization. So in computing, the virtualization means to create a virtual version of a device or resource, such as a server, storage device, network, or even an operating system, where the framework divides the resource into one or more execution environments. So virtualization basically refers to the technologies designed to provide a layer of abstraction. So for example, when we go for a disk partition, we all have laptops, we all have systems at home. So we have a hard drive, but we go for the partitioning of a hard drive. So logically, it is being divided into two drives, maybe C, D, E, whatever. But at the same time, it should be appreciated that it is only one hard drive, single physical hard drive, which has been divided or partitioned into 2 or 3 hard drives. So this particular concept is known as a virtualization. And the core concept of virtualization actually lies in partitioning, wherein a single physical server is divided into multiple logical servers. Though the physical server is one, but logically they are divided, and these particular servers are all independent to each other. The types of virtualization are hardware virtualization, network virtualization, and storage virtualization. Hardware virtualization refers to the creation of a virtual machine. It refers to the creation of a virtual machine that acts like a real computer within an operating system. Hardware virtualization, what does it do? It basically consolidates many small physical servers into one large physical server. So many small physical servers, they are consolidated to one large physical server so that it can be used more effectively. So the hardware virtualization is basically encompassing many physical servers that are independent to each other, and they can be logically combined so that one logical server is achieved and it can be used more effectively and optimally. Network virtualization. It is a method of combining the available resources in a network by splitting up the available bandwidth into channels, each of which is independent from the others. For example, we have full duplex. When we talk about full duplex mode, there is one transmission line and data flows from A to B as well as from B to A. But logically, though to us it seems to be one single channel, but internally they are actually two channels, wherein this particular bandwidth, the complete bandwidth of this is divided into two channels, and this particular channel will be required to send data from A to B, whereas the second channel will be required to send data from B to A. So logically to a user, it will appear as if it's one channel, but practically there are two different channels. So this is the best concept of network virtualization. Then comes the storage virtualization. The storage virtualization is the apparent pooling of data from multiple storage devices, even different types of storage devices, into what appears to be a single device that is managed from a central console. Storage virtualization basically helps the storage administrator to perform the tasks of backup, archiving, and recovery more easily. So the virtualization concept is again on the partition, but if it is being done on the hardware, then hardware virtualization. If it is being done on the network channels, then the network virtualization. And if it is being done on the storage devices, then it will be the storage virtualization. Then comes the computing technologies. So the very first computing technology that we have is the cloud computing. Cloud computing is a computing in which large groups of remote servers are networked to allow centralized data storage and online access to computer services or resources. In cloud computing systems, there is no significant workload or shift. Local computers do not have to have all the resources here, but the cloud computing service providers, they can provide you the resources as and when you require, and you pay accordingly to what you consume. So the cloud computing is a concept wherein a particular local machine does not need to have all the resources available, or you do not need to spend for each and every resource to be available at your point. However, as and when you require, you can always play the cloud service provider and use the resources. So the characteristics of cloud computing are elasticity and scalability. Cloud computing gives us the ability to expand and reduce resources according to the specific service requirements. And we can also scale up, because as and when we require, we can use the service provider services. Pay per use, as and when you use, you pay accordingly. On demand, whenever there is a requirement, we can use it. Resiliency, this shows that we can easily completely isolate the failure of server and storage resources from cloud users. Multi-tenancy, public cloud service providers often can host the cloud services for multiple users, and at the same time multiple users can use the same infrastructure. So we can say that it is multi-tenant. Workload movement for certain types of workloads. So this characteristic allows the providers to migrate their workload from one server to another. As and when, if there is a load on one particular server more, it can be shifted to any other different server. So here we see that what are the different types of clouds: a public cloud, private cloud, community cloud, and the hybrid cloud. So as the name suggests, public cloud, it is one based on standard cloud computing model. In this, applications, storages, they are all available to the general public over the internet, and they may be free or offered on a pay-per-usage. Private clouds, these are also known as internal clouds, and they are primarily built by any IT department for a particular organization or for a particular enterprise. So the data is much secure in private clouds, and the security is also high in the private clouds. Then comes the hybrid cloud. Hybrid cloud is a blend of both internal and external providers. It is a composition of two or more private or public clouds, and they have to maintain their unique identity, but at the same time they have some characteristics of private as well as public clouds. Cloud service models. So herein we see that the cloud service models, mainly they are infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. So infrastructure as a service, we can see that wherein the infrastructure like hardware, software equipments can be used or can be scaled up and down dynamically. Obviously, we are paying for this whole usage to the service provider, but according to our need, if it's a hardware, software equipment, it would fall under the category of IaaS. If it is platform, which will offer high-level integrated environment to build, test, and deploy customer applications, will fall under PaaS. And SaaS, wherein special purpose software which we do not have on our system, we can request it through our service providers and can be remotely accessed, will fall under the purview of SaaS. For example, social networking websites, Facebook, LinkedIn, Hotmail, Google Docs, Picasa, YouTube, Flickr, they are all very well examples of cloud computing. Then comes another concept which is known as grid computing. Grid computing is a collection of computer resources from multiple locations to reach a common goal. Now herein we will see that these grid nodes, they are all independent to each other, but they can be clubbed together or they can be collected from different locations all over the world. And these machines will work together to perform a particular major complex task, and the major objective would to achieve a common goal. This technology is basically used in mathematical computations or statistical computations. Grid computing combines computers from multiple administrative domains to reach a common goal or to solve a single task, and may then disappear just as quickly. So they combine together to perform a particular task, and once that particular task is performed, they may disconnect themselves and may then become a part of another grid. In a grid computing environment, computers are linked together so that a task on one machine could utilize the unused processing power on another machine to execute their tasks. Now, what basically the advantage is that grid computing allows one person to share its computer resources across the networks. This can both increase the computational power available to the programs and at the same time reduce the number of machines needed by a particular organization. So an organization, if at all required to have say 40 computers to solve a particular task, it does not need to have all those 40 computers at its place. It can form a grid according to which a particular machines can get linked together so that the task on one machine could utilize the unused processing power of the other machine so that the task is performed in a faster way. Benefits of grid computing. Benefits are making use of underutilized resources, because there are certain times that all the computing resources are not used. So to use those underutilized resources, grid computing is best fit in. Resource balancing, it affects by scheduling grid jobs on machine with low utilization. Parallel CPU capacity, parallelly machines are working, so CPUs are getting used parallelly. Virtual resources and virtual organizations for collaboration among a wider audience. Management, in this heterogeneous systems will create new opportunities to better manage a larger distributed IT infrastructure. It is reliable, and then the access to additional resources is there. Security, single sign-on. Now, which machines are going to become a part of it? So they firstly need to have a sign-on. A user should authenticate once and should declare that he is a legitimate user. Then interoperability with local security solutions. Access to local resources should have local security policy at a local level. Protection of credentials, user, password, private keys, they all should be protected. Exportability, that means they cannot use a large amount of encryption at a time. There should be a minimum communication at a time. Support for secure group communication. In this, there are a number of processes which coordinate their activities. So this coordination must be secure, and for this, there should be a policy. Support for multiple implementations. There should be a security policy which will ensure and provide security to multiple sources based on public and private key cryptography. So the major differences between cloud computing and grid computing are: Clouds enable access to least computing power and storage capacity from your desktop, whereas grids enable access to shared computing power and storage capacity from your desktop. Service provider in cloud computing, they are large individual companies, Amazon, Microsoft, and at a smaller scale, institutes, organizations deploying open source software. Whereas in grid computing, the research institutes and universities, they federate their services around the world through projects. Who pays for the service in cloud computing? It is we, the user has to pay. Whereas in grid computing, the government providers and users are usually publicly funded research organizations. And what are they useful for? Clouds are best useful for supporting long-term services and long-running projects, whereas in grids, they are designed to handle large sets of limited duration jobs that produce or use large quantities of data. So with this, we are through with the presentation, and at any point in time, if you have any doubts, you may send your mails to me through at sukriti.arora@ica.in. There are certain queries which we need to answer, and we will see if we can answer them right now. Manisha, technically speaking, whiteboard and sticky notes, I need to refer to the material once to come back to you. You can send your query to me through email, and I will try to give you more relevant answer then. Manisha is asking, is context diagram also a type of DFD? Yes, it is, and it is a zero level DFT. And Manisha Dudlani, again, what is the difference between webinar and webcast? I need to contact to my e-learning team to get back to you regarding this. And with this, I would again request you all to please concentrate on your studies. And in case you are stuck up anywhere, I'm available to you. You can send your queries to me, sukriti.arora@ica.in, and given at least 4 to 5 working days time to respond back to you, because there are lot many queries which keep on coming through telephone also, and we are catering to everybody's need. So you have to be a bit patient, and it's better appreciated that if the queries are relevant to the study material only. Now, the today's presentation, I have tried my best to give you some kind of an input that what all the business processes are, what could be the need of business process automation, and when the businesses are automated, there has to be a need which is for the business process reengineering. And once the reengineering, there has to be certain process managements wherein we can say that 6 Sigma and TQM are the major 2 ways with which a business process can keep on improving. Once we have business process automation, then we have to have certain controls. The first thing that we need to put is that we should try to have preventive controls so that an error does not occur. But even if it occurs, we should be in a position to detect them. And if in case we are able to detect, we should be able to correct or rectify also. Then after that, we have discussed that from an auditor's perspective, if you are being asked to go for an information system audit, what all major areas you would be emphasizing on. So from an auditor's perspective, what all controls need to be checklisted, that we have discussed. And then some of the emerging technologies like the computing, cloud computing and the grid computing, and I have tried my best to declare some kind of differences between the two. I hope that today's session would be of use to you. If in case you have any queries, send your queries to me at sukriti.arora@ica.in. And all the very best to you for your future endeavors. Do try the questions through writing, and I'm sure once you will try to self-analyze your performance, you will see that your level of preparation will definitely increase, and you will gain the confidence also. So all the very best and happy New Year.